Have you ever stopped to think about what really drives a person to risk their own life? In the case of Cho Hyun-ju, it is not just survival or money, but the pursuit of something deeply personal, the chance to live true to their own identity. In a world where rules and judgments surround you, she faces a deadly game to claim her authenticity. This story challenges any preconceived idea of courage and strength, because it shows us that fighting for yourself can be the most intense battle of all. Get ready to understand how fear, strategy, and the desire to be true intertwine in each of her choices if you are a fan of cinema, psychology, and want to understand the mind behind your favorite character. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss any video. But first, comment below which character you want me to analyze here on the channel. Now let's go to the video. Cho Hyun-ju emerges in the universe of Squid Game as someone who seems to have absolute control over their own life. But soon we realize that behind the firm posture, there is a story full of layers. She is that person you look at and think this one knows what they want, but only those who get close perceive the complexity they carry. This first impression creates immediate curiosity. Who really is Hyun-ju, and what led them to be there? It is impossible not to wonder whether her strength is natural or the result of invisible battles before the game. Hyun-ju already demonstrated discipline and dedication, characteristics that at the same time charm and intimidate. This posture does not arise out of nowhere. It is the result of years shaping her mind and body, preparing to face any obstacle. Think of those people who always seem to be one step ahead, planning, calculating, anticipating problems. Hyun-ju fits this mold, but also gradually reveals that behind the strategy there is a vulnerable human side that not everyone has the chance to know. Her presence in the game draws attention not only for physical ability, but for mental clarity. She can read situations, analyze people, and predict movements like someone who has spent a lifetime studying human behavior. Have you ever stopped to think how many times we underestimate those who appear silent, observant, but who internally are processing every detail? It is this contrast that makes Hyun-ju fascinating and at the same time unpredictable. A key word that accompanies Hyun-ju is adaptation. From the beginning, we notice that she does not just react, but transforms challenges into opportunities. This ability makes you identify almost instinctively, because who would not like to have a sharp mind, ready to deal with any crisis without losing control? Hyun-ju reminds us that survival requires emotional intelligence as much as physical, something many of us neglect in daily life. The character also evokes empathy by showing that strength does not exclude vulnerability. Even firm, she feels fear, insecurity, and questions her decisions, especially in moments of extreme pressure. This duality creates an immediate connection with the viewer who realizes that deep down we all have similar internal conflicts. Identification arises from this tension between self-control and the fragility we try to hide from the world. Another interesting point is how Hyun-ju presents herself as someone who observes, listens, and learns before acting. This leads us to reflect on the importance of perceiving the environment before making decisions, something applicable in career, relationships, and even personal life. How many times do we rush without analyzing, failing to take advantage of valuable information that could save us from mistakes? She becomes a mirror of what many people aspire to be: strategic, calm, and efficient. Her posture also highlights the relationship between past and present. Each gesture, each decision made in the game seems to have roots in previous experiences, shaping a complex and multifaceted personality. This connection between memory, traumas, and choices shows that no one is just what they appear to be, but rather the result of a continuous construction made of successes, mistakes, and adaptations. It is impossible not to feel impacted by this depth. Finally, Hyun-ju is more than just a competitor in the game. She represents the human capacity for survival combined with emotional intelligence and discipline. The viewer is intrigued, wanting to discover how she got there, what strategies guided her, and what lies behind those seemingly cold decisions. And it is exactly this curiosity that leads us straight to the next chapter: her internal conflict and the transition that shaped her. The story of Hyun-ju in the army. Hyun-ju's trajectory in the army is not just a chapter of discipline, it is a laboratory of survival and self-knowledge. She learned to deal with pressure, fear, and uncertainty daily, developing a mental resilience that few can imagine. This experience shaped her worldview. Life is unpredictable, but preparation and self-control can become powerful allies. Watching the viewer realizes that her calm is not luck, but accumulated practice. The army also taught Hyun-ju about hierarchy and leadership. But in a peculiar way, she understood that obeying does not mean losing autonomy. This duality shows how life experiences shape complex decisions. In dangerous situations, this ability becomes vital because the mind must balance strategy and ethics. It is easy to relate to this logic, because we have all faced moments when following rules and at the same time thinking for ourselves becomes a real dilemma. Her transition from the army to the game was not simple. Suddenly, rigid rules gave way to a world where morality is blurred and survival has no guarantees. Adaptation required not only physical ability, but an internal transformation. She needed to learn to balance instinct, strategy, and empathy in a hostile environment. Something that makes any viewer reflect on how they would react in extreme situations. It is at this point that the most intense internal conflicts arise: discipline versus survival, ethics versus necessity. Each decision carries emotional weight because military experience taught the importance of calculation, but the game forces choices that do not always have correct answers. This tension creates a fascinating narrative, as it shows how past and present collide in the mind of someone who needs to survive. It is impossible not to feel a chill imagining the choices she faced. Hyun-ju also learned to manage fear and anxiety, skills refined in the army, but that became essential in the game. The pressure of a deadly situation makes anyone reveal hidden layers of themselves. For the viewer, this is intriguing. Seeing someone maintain composure in the face of chaos makes us reflect on our own capacity for emotional resilience. She becomes an example of how mental preparation can be decisive when everything seems lost. The transition to the game also exposes her vulnerability because not every strategy saves the heart from a moral dilemma. Hyun-ju discovers that emotional intelligence and physical strength are not enough when the game demands choices that confront personal values. This experience humanizes the character, showing that no matter how prepared one is, emotional challenges always test our essence. And this is what creates instant identification with the audience. It is interesting to notice how each decision in the game is a direct reflection of the lessons from the army: control, observation, and constant analysis. However, unlike the military environment, in the game she has no fixed allies, and each move of trust involves risk. This instability amplifies the tension and makes us understand how admirable, but also dangerous, her resilience is, because she needs to trust and distrust at the same time. Finally, the passage from the army to the game shows that Hyun-ju's life is marked by extreme adaptations. Each experience shapes future choices and reveals layers of her personality that would not be visible under ordinary circumstances. The feeling for the viewer is of continuous learning, almost as if we were being guided by someone who faced the impossible and yet maintains clarity of thought. And it is this trajectory that prepares her for the human challenges we will see next. In the relationships with other players, relationship with the pregnant player and the elderly woman in the game, Hyun-ju faces a different challenge. It is not just about surviving physically, but dealing with complex emotions of those around her. Her relationship with the pregnant player and the elderly woman shows that empathy and strategy do not always go separate ways. It is at this moment that we perceive a new facet of her personality, someone capable of balancing care and rationality. Even in an environment where any mistake can be fatal, the pregnant player represents vulnerability and hope, and Hyun-ju finds herself torn between protecting and keeping distance. This tension is fascinating because we have all gone through moments when we need to help someone without compromising our own safety. With each interaction, we see how Hyun-ju analyzes risks and consequences, reflecting on values and priorities. This balance between protective instinct and survival makes her story even more human. The elderly woman, on the other hand, is a mirror of fragility, but also of unexpected astuteness. Hyun-ju realizes that not everything is obvious. Seemingly weak people can surprise. This perception leads us to reflect on quick judgments in everyday life. How many times do we underestimate someone and then regret it? In the game, each decision involving other players becomes a lesson about empathy, analysis, and strategy. The emotional conflict is constant because helping others comes at a cost that can compromise her own survival. Hyun-Ru learns gradually that leading or protecting involves painful choices. This dynamic creates continuous tension, keeping the viewer engaged with the narrative, cheering and reflecting on what they would do in her place. It is almost as if we are experiencing the dilemma together. Feeling the weight of each decision, the relationship with these two characters also reveals Hyun-Ru's ability to perceive human nuances: fear, pain, hope, and despair. She not only sees, but interprets subtle signals, understanding when it is time to act and when it is better to observe. For the audience, this is inspiring because it shows how attention and sensitivity can be decisive in critical situations. Something that goes beyond the game and connects with real life. It is in this context that valuable lessons about trust and collaboration arise. Hyun-Ru realizes that surviving alone is different from leading or supporting someone. The viewer feels this tension and at the same time learns from it. The safest path is not always the best, and altruism is not always a luxury we can afford. This duality generates deep reflection about human choices and priorities. Each interaction with the pregnant player and the elderly woman expands Hyun-Ru's complexity as a character. She learns to calculate risks, evaluate intentions, and maintain humanity even under extreme pressure. This process creates a narrative rich in learning and identification, where the audience can project themselves, imagine difficult decisions, and question their own reactions in similar dilemmas. Finally, this stage of the game shows that Hyun-Ru's true challenge is not just to win physically, but to maintain emotional and ethical balance amid chaos. This experience prepares her to understand human dynamics even more deeply, anticipate behaviors, and deal with internal and external conflicts simultaneously. And it is this ability that naturally leads us to the next topic: how all these factors shape her personality and choices behind Hyun-Ru's strength. There is a deeply human and personal reason she participates in the game: to finance her gender transition surgeries in Thailand. This detail adds an emotional layer that completely changes the perception we have of her. It is not just about survival, but about achieving something essential for her identity and happiness. Watching, the viewer immediately feels the gravity and courage behind each choice she makes. The pursuit of the surgeries represents more than aesthetics. It is an affirmation of who she truly is. Each risk in the game carries not only the chance of losing life, but also the weight of delaying or preventing her personal fulfillment. This motivation transforms the narrative. The audience understands that her struggle is not only physical but existential, and that each strategic move is guided by a legitimate desire to live fully and authentically. This mission also humanizes Hyun-Ru in a profound way. The game is not just about money or power, it is about having control over her own body and destiny. For the viewer, it creates immediate identification because we have all, at some point, felt the desire to change something fundamental in our lives, even if the risk is great. And this makes each challenge she faces resonate personally with the audience. The context of Thailand is not random. The country is known for allowing transition surgeries with greater ease and quality. This choice shows planning and determination, characteristics that shape her personality. The viewer realizes that behind the strategic coldness, there is someone who knows exactly what they want and is willing to fight for their future. It is impossible not to cheer and connect with this journey. This motivation also intensifies the moral dilemmas of the game. Each decision to help someone or protect herself now has an even deeper dimension. She is not just playing for survival, but for her right to exist fully. This makes the audience reflect on what is worth risking and how our own choices directly impact the dreams we nurture. Moreover, this story reminds us that courage is not the absence of fear, but acting despite it. Hyun-Ru faces opponents, ethical dilemmas, and deadly risks, all in the name of a life that is true to her identity. It is a lesson of resilience and determination that transcends the universe of the series, showing that fighting for who you really are can be as challenging as any extreme competition with each step in the game. Hyun-Ru's motivation intertwines with her strategy and relationships with other players. She needs to balance care, observation, and risk, knowing that the prize is not just money, but the possibility of becoming who she always wanted to be. This layer adds emotional tension and creates empathy, because we all understand what it means to pursue something that defines our own being finally. This motivation transforms Hyun-Ru into an example of courage and authenticity, someone who does not bow to difficulties and faces the impossible with determination. Each choice in the game now carries multiple layers of meaning, showing that survival, identity, and ethics can intertwine in complex ways. And it is this inner strength that leads us straight to the next topic: how all these conflicts shape her personality and choices. Each experience Hyun-ju has lived, from the army to the challenges of the game, contributed to shaping a unique personality marked by discipline, resilience, and emotional intelligence. She is not just strategic, but deeply aware of her emotions and limits. This awareness allows her to make choices that balance survival and ethics, something we can all learn to apply in our own daily decisions. The combination of military discipline and human vulnerability creates a fascinating contrast. Hyun-ju knows when to act and when to observe, when to be tough and when to show empathy. This balance shows how difficult experiences can form silent leaders, people who can manage complex situations with clarity without needing to show off all the time. Her relationship with the pregnant player and the elderly woman teaches something even deeper: that decisions involve not only logic but also values and compassion. Hyun-ju realizes that survival is not isolated, and that our choices impact not only ourselves but everyone around us. This understanding makes her strategically skilled and emotionally connected. The goal of financing her surgeries adds another layer to her personality: courage and authenticity. Each decision she makes, each risk she takes, is guided by a desire to live truthfully without compromises. This reminds us that deep personal goals shape not only actions, but also character and integrity. Hyun-ju also develops an extraordinary capacity for adaptation. In each new situation, she learns, recalculates, and adjusts strategies. This flexibility is crucial in high-pressure contexts and shows us that growth requires not only strength, but emotional intelligence, perception, and the ability to change course when necessary. Her experience demonstrates how past, personal goals and relationships influence decisions. Each trauma, learning, and human connection contributes to more conscious choices. For the viewer, it is clear that personality is not static. It is a continuous construction, shaped by everything we live and feel. The balance between strategy, empathy, and authenticity makes Hyun-ju a model of complex and inspiring behavior. She teaches us that being strong does not mean being insensitive, and that surviving or achieving goals requires thinking, feeling, and acting in harmony. It is a lesson that goes beyond the universe of the series and applies to real-life challenges. Finally, all these layers make Hyun-ju memorable, a character who combines courage, emotional intelligence, empathy, and determination. Her choices reflect who she is, and each decision she makes shows the profound impact of life experiences on our personality. And it is exactly this depth that leaves us eager to explore her complete journey as the narrative continues. Cho Hyun-ju teaches us that courage is not the absence of fear, but acting even when everything seems impossible. Each choice she makes, each risk she takes, reflects the complexity of the human experience. Survival, identity, and empathy walk together. And you, what did you think of her trajectory? Which character do you want me to analyze in the next video? Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue exploring stories that teach us about courage, strategy, and humanity.